Greetings and welcome to another episode of I Survived Youth Group in the 90s. I'm your host, Scott, and this is my co-host, Caleb. Caleb, what's going on tonight? It's great to see you.
Yeah, not much. Logging in late to get some stuff done, huh?
Burning the midnight oil for all you fans out there. Again, thanks,
fans
moms.
of what? Of burning the midnight oil, or fans of us, or fans of the Petra song Midnight Oil? Which one is it?
Oh, dude. A good pull on that.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm going to listen to that now. Don't steal that for your music podcast. It's good to see you. It's been a couple weeks. We are back to talk about the experience growing up as youth group kids in the 90s and how that shaped our adult lives. We'll talk to old friends about their faith journeys spanning from the 90s to today and discuss current cultural topics through the lens of someone who grew up during this era. So, Caleb, it's a little bit special. I'll allow you, as if I'm in charge. You have permission. This is a very complimentarian relationship we have. Who's our guest today? This is special for you.
Yeah, so we were joined by my sister Bethany, who sat down with us, and after she had put her kid to bed and talked with us for a couple hours, so it was really good. I think she was one of the people, I think, when you threw this out even the first time, who said she was interested, and then I had pestered her again, and we made time to do it. So I was thankful she was willing to join the show. I think it was really fun to talk with her and hear more about her journey and kind of just get that chance to have her on the show. So yeah, it was fun.
Now that's the nice big brother thing to say. Now tell me how you really feel and then edit it out later.
Okay,
No, it was awesome. You guys continue to have a really fun dynamic. And it was great to catch up with her. Again, like most people we're talking to here, it's been way too long. And I was impressed by her journey. She's obviously gone through some stuff, which she'll talk about in the episode. And most of all, the change that she's been through just in terms of who she was in the 90s following you into youth group. And then, the person she's become today, that journey is kind of exactly what we're going for in these interviews.
Yeah. And she did some traveling, and that started to impact her. And, it really was one of those, get outside the nest and see where things take you. And yeah, I thought she was really honest about kind of some of the hangups or some of the things that she realized looking back, which I think is another thing that is, kind of interesting about this whole experience. It's not just the journey, but also that looking back. And again, not looking back. We've had an episode recently about the idea of shame and looking back, but like not looking back as like, oh, I can't believe it, but just kind of recognizing what was going on and kind of who that person was, and seeing how you change, and seeing how you stay the same in some ways too, but just seeing how you change and how you can learn from those experiences. And she learned from, I think, not only that high school experience, but from a lot of the traveling as well. So yeah.
Yeah, what struck me about her conversation with us was the more she got outside of her bubble, the more that her faith was challenged, and not in a sense that like she was tempted to walk away or anything, but you start to get to know people from different walks of life, people from different ethnic backgrounds, people from different religious upbringings, and all of a sudden you realize like, hey, the bubble I was in the 90s, frankly, was pretty small. So, yeah. And that can be, frankly, sometimes that can be a challenge for people. They don't want that bubble to get too big or get popped because it's safe. That's fine. But I commend, people like Bethany who get out there and go out on the limb and have a big experience that will kind of force them to think about things in a different way.
It's interesting because both of us went overseas for a little bit and kind of lived outside the country for a couple of years. And as I think about my kids, I think, oh yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity for them potentially do that, and terrified about them to actually do that all in one. And not because I'm worried about my kids' bubble being burst, just I like my kids and I don't want them to leave. That's more of it than anything else. But so yeah, it's just interesting that we kind of both forgot or both went through that. And I think you even said like, oh, I forgot you went to Thailand. And
yep.
It's something I think I forget about too, even sometimes, even though it's fairly prevalent in our conversations. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's really steeped in your family's tradition, and kind of forgot about that whole thing. To say that you don't want your kids to leave, I would hope maybe that your mom listens to this episode, and in a way there's certainly different parts of this episode that are an ode to your mom and to your dad. So enjoy that, because there was some pretty good, honest, vulnerable moments that way.
Yeah, I may or may not cry at some point in this episode.
You always cry.
I do. We get done recording, I just break down every time.
It's so intense.
Yeah, there's been a couple episodes where I have hardly said anything, so we want the guest to talk, and so it's just funny. Like it's all that energy to keep it in. That eventually we get done with the call, and I just let it all out and cry.
You all can't see this because we're on Zoom, but I'm talking with the guest, and Caleb is on the third screen, just bawling his eyes out. We have to edit that out. So it takes so long for us to get these episodes out. No, I really enjoyed the conversation, particularly just kind of the stark contrast of who she was in the 90s. Not necessarily that your sister's faith is super different or anything, but I don't want to spoil anything, but you'll just kind of hear how she changed from one person into another in a good way, without feeling like, oh man, who I was in the 90s is, I'm super embarrassed by.
Yeah. Yep. No, it was really really exciting to give her a chance to talk, which I think is what we're going for, is, come on the show and just talk about your experience, and we're going to sit back and listen and just kind of take it in. So yeah.
So shout out to your mom and dad who parented two excellent kids. Well done. Everyone else, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And in the similar vein, if you would like to come on and chat, we would love to hear from you. So don't be afraid to reach out to us either by email or by Twitter. But we really thank you for listening, and enjoy the episode.
Hi, this is Caleb, the producer of the show, just breaking in like I do every episode to remind everyone that the views and opinions expressed on this show may not actually be held or even approved of by everyone appearing on this episode. One of the goals of this show is to give everyone a safe space to share their opinions and thoughts on deeply personal matters of faith. We are not looking to start an argument, but instead let people share how they feel. We also know that our memories of events that happened 25 to 30 years ago may not be 100% accurate. We assume everyone's best intentions as they share how they remembered the experience of their youth. Now, back to the show.
We are here talking tonight with Bethany. Bethany, it's been a while. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us. Now, for the listener out there, we should be very upfront about this. There is a connection between our guests and our hosts. So please, Caleb, Bethany, please describe what's going on here.
Well, I think the best thing about it is you said the listener, which we're still assuming is just my mom. And
Right.
now we have to explain this connection to her. Yeah, no, Bethany is my sister. I'm older by 2 years and immature by about 20, more immature by about 20. So that seems to work out. So yeah, Bethany, welcome to the show. I'm glad you could join my podcast.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Unlike the other guests we've had, we have not had to pay Bethany to be here. So very happy about that.
It was very, did it willingly.
Just did it out of the goodness of your heart. No,
Don't tell her we pay people.
we got more people on though. So no.
Yeah, we pay people.
Yes.
I was in youth group with both of you for many years.
Yep.
And so we have this little bit of a generational thing going on. So yes, Bethany, thank you for joining us. Let's just jump right into it. What about Five Oaks Youth Group are things that you still remember? Like, tell us maybe how you first started attending along with your family and some of those early memories from youth group.
So we joined Five Oaks before I was in youth groups. I believe I was in 5th grade when we came to Five Oaks. And so our parents did go to Five Oaks. So we all went as a family. And so I didn't start until, what was it? Was it 7th grade that we started? I don't honestly remember youth group. Was it 7th
Sounds
grade?
about right.
Yeah. So 7th grade. So I had to wait a couple years to be in youth group. So I got to start like at the very beginning and go all the way 7th through 12th grade. But I remember obviously when you have a big brother or an older sibling, and you get to see all the cool, amazing things he does with all his friends and in the youth group. I was really excited to join the youth group. So, and when you guys were talking about the kidnapping, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot all about that. But I was so like excited to get kidnapped, which is such
See,
a
there you
horrible,
go.
which is
Everyone
such a
wanted to get
horrible
kidnapped.
thing to say.
Who
Like,
doesn't want to get kidnapped?
I was so pumped about getting because I knew the drill. I
You
knew
knew
what
it
was
was
going to
coming.
happen. Yeah, I knew it was coming. I knew it was going to happen. I don't think I knew the night, but I was like super excited for that. So thank you for reminding me of that. But I was like, oh yeah, that was so fun. I loved that. But
See, no
probably
harm, no
didn't do
foul.
it.
Everyone's fine.
Yeah, it was great.
No, everyone loved it. End of story.
I do remember. I will not name names, but I do remember like a specific person. They said they had to like warn her, like maybe don't go to bed the way you normally go to bed, like because
Mm,
like something might happen tonight, and we want to be dressed appropriately. So I
yeah.
remember that happened with a certain person that I won't name from the youth group, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't
Don't
know.
get in your PJs.
Yep.
Yeah. What are some of those things that you said you were kind of jealous of or looking forward to that you saw your big brother do that you were kind of like, I want to do this. I want to be part of this group for this reason.
I mean, I'm just a social person, so just hanging out with a group of people in general is super fun and exciting. The goofy games, the retreats, like all of that stuff. I just wanted to do. I mean, I always wanted to hang out with Caleb and his friends. Like when you guys were over, I'm like, let's see if I can, hang around and annoy you guys until Caleb would kick me out. So, I always just wanted to be, part of the crew or the group or whatever. So
Sure.
I think
Sure.
all of those things I was excited about doing or being a part of and experiencing. So,
Well, this is very sweet. Do you still look up to your brother the same way? Or are you just like, no, this is lame. I do not want to, don't want to be a podcast editor. I don't want to love music.
I do love music, not the same way that he loves music. I mean, I think it's cool to do a podcast. I think it's cool that he's gotten into this hobby. And when I tell him, I was like, I'm gonna be on my brother's podcast, like, ooh. So I was like, no, it's really not that
Mhm.
cool. Like, don't get excited.
No, thank you. It is not that cool. Yeah.
I was like, I'm sure the only people that listen to this are like those of us that went to this youth group or church or whatever. So, but
And also the people we pay to
yeah,
listen.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And
pay
mom,
to
of
come on,
course.
pay to listen. Yeah,
Hey,
we got
mom.
it.
But
Increase.
yeah. So I was like, I know it sounds really cool, but that's really what it is. So yeah, I don't know. I just think I was looking forward to everything and every part of it, and
Sure.
just being a part of that community. So yeah.
Sure. Well, now Caleb in the past has described your Christian home that you guys grew up in. If I'm not taking this too out of context, you said a couple of times you were raised by two ex-hippies.
Oh, totally.
And so kind of give us your take on the Christian home that you grew up in.
I mean, I just feel like we were so blessed with the parents that we were given, and yeah, just both really strong in their faith. Our mom was a very strong, independent lady that I've now realized doesn't maybe didn't necessarily. I know Caleb was like, "What? You didn't know this?" I didn't realize growing up that some of our mother's beliefs were not the same as the church that we were raised
Mm,
in. So that was something like when I was in college or a young adult, kind of realized I was like, oh wait, that doesn't okay, that doesn't track.
sure.
So that was kind of interesting for me to kind of figure out. So I just kind of assumed both of our parents' beliefs were kind of the same as the church, and that's not necessarily, not necessarily true. So I think she, wasn't always on the same page with some people, and I just assumed that everyone else in our church had the same kind of beliefs as like things that I knew, like our mom was talking
Mm,
about at home or those kind of things. So I think our dad was more on track with some of the things then in the church. Some of his beliefs have kind of changed over the years. So
mhm.
I don't know. Caleb and I don't agree on like on the line of like how conservative or liberal our parents are. So
It's kind of a hard thing to pick up though as a kid, right? Unless
it
it's like,
was.
and I think now those things are more blatant because they're more part of the culture, the political stuff,
Yes.
that can separate people.
Hmm.
But I resonate with what you're saying a little bit because, we go to a church that's relatively still evangelical, although not entirely. And there are things that are said where we pull my son aside and just be like, look, you've heard this. We
Mm-hmm.
don't agree with it, kind of thing. And I hope that's not confusing to him, but I can see as a kid or just be like, well, yeah, everyone, my parents are the best. They're the smartest people I know. Why doesn't everyone believe the same thing they do?
Yeah. Or I was just like, well, of course, if this is the church they're raising us in, they believe the same thing that we're being taught in church or youth group, So
Hmm.
I didn't quite understand that until when I got into college and I was a part of different Christian groups and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then now it's fun to like reminisce with mom even and Caleb but we'll talk about that and she'll be like, "Oh no, this one time I cleared out a whole room." Like like she'll tell us stories of things that would happen in like her small group and I was like, "Oh, okay." But I didn't, we didn't always see or know that when you're a kid, growing up. So your parents don't always you don't
Hmm.
always see that. So yeah, so I don't know, we just I also have a lot of friends that were raised in all sorts of different kinds of Christian churches, and I hear about like kind of I don't know just some struggles they have with how they were raised or what those kind of things, and
Hmm.
I look at our or their relationship with their parents, and I just look at our my relationship with our parents and how our parents raised us, and I'm just like we hit the lottery on that one. Like we are so blessed to have the parents that we have and to have the relationship that we have with them still as adults.
Hmm.
So I'm thankful that our parents raised us and brought us to church and we were a part of that church community. So I feel really blessed to
So
have
they
that growing
continue to
up.
prioritize it, even though some things might have been a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I think what for me is happening is it's coming full circle where now I'm raising my daughter in the church and she's becoming a part of that community. And she has that community and we have that church community. And it's just, I've realized what a blessing that was growing up as a young adult or a teenager. I mean, I think about like my high school graduation party, I'd say 80% of the people there were people from our church
Hmm.
Yeah.
like our friends or our friends' parents or a lot of our parents' friends. And a lot of those people are still, even though I might not see them on a regular basis, I still feel like they're a part of my community because they're still like connected to our parents. Like when I
Hmm.
was going through my cancer journey, I know like so many people from our church community growing up like reached out to me or said
Oh,
like
wow.
like your mom and dad told us what's going on, like we're praying for you. Like it was just amazing to like still feel that impact and still have those people feel like they're still a part of my community even though I may have not talked to them in years. So I just realized like how important that community is and still is as an adult and now how important it is for my child to have that as she's growing up.
That's super
Like,
cool.
yeah, like
Yeah.
she loves going to church. She, after church, wants to run around the sanctuary and play with her friends. And she like never wants to leave. And I love that. And we have so many friends that have just stepped up and showed up for us as we've been going through lots of things in our family. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's been really cool to see that. And also I'll throw this name out, but one of the women that we went to youth group with, we're now in church together, and our daughters are like friends and growing up together.
Oh,
And so we always talk about like throwback. So Liz and I are like in the same book club, like we're in the like same group of friends. We go to church together, and now our daughters are growing up as friends. So it's kind of a cool like
that's
full circle to see that happen. So yeah, so that's been really fun too.
that's awesome.
And then we talk about it and we're like, oh yeah, Liz,
Yeah.
like when
Give
we
me a little
talk to like
elbow.
about people like past in history, they're like, "Oh yeah." She's like, "Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about." So,
Well, since your mom and maybe your dad are absolutely listening to this episode, I would just like to say sorry for spilling Hawaiian punch on the new carpet that one time because I'm still feel super guilty about that. I should probably just write them a check for
oh,
that
that's
carpet.
right.
Ay, all
Yeah.
right.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
Breaking
that's
your arm sledding. I mean, not that that affected my parents, but yeah.
yeah, that was a very explicit instruction, and I did it, and then I just left the house. So,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's good times. Good times.
Anyway, all right. Well, awesome. Yeah, the foundation is something we all want to give to our kids, and it's
Mhm.
been imparted on us throughout the years that like, hey, we want church to be part of the foundation of our kids growing up, so we elect to keep them going, even though the situation may not be kind of like your mom's situation, not a perfect match. Okay, we can deal with it and we can figure it out at home. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We've talked to multiple people so far who kind of came to a Five Oaks and never left, for lack of a better phrase. And Caleb has said multiple times, I'm the odd one here. I went to Five Oaks and left and never came back. So what about you? Did you kind of end up back there for a while after you graduated high school, college?
I think when our parents were still going, I don't remember when our parents left. I think when our parents were still going, like if I was home for the summer or like a
Mm,
break or something, I probably went to Five Oaks just to like go to church with our parents or go as a
mhm.
family. But honestly, I don't remember when they left, so I don't really remember when I stopped going. But I wasn't involved in the church except that summer that I ran the Sunday school.
Wow.
I almost forgot about that, but yeah, so I don't remember if I might have been a freshman or a sophomore. I don't know why Kathy approached me and she was like, I need help with this. So I basically took like two VBS programs and ran them as our like Sunday school like program and classes for the
Hmm.
whole summer. Yeah, I was in charge of that. I can't remember which year, honestly. It might have been like my sophomore year.
Okay.
So I clearly was involved at least in that aspect, but I think that was mainly I would just come back like in the summers and then break. And then when I was in college, I became involved in an Assembly of God church actually. So I was very involved in that, and I ended up being like a youth group leader and things like that. So I was pretty involved in that church. So I think once the older I got and the more I got involved in my church in college, I think the less I was involved with Five Oaks.
Sure.
But yeah, I
Sure.
didn't I think that was only the kind of only leadership position I served in Five Oaks. I
Hmm.
swear I was in college. Maybe I was in high school. Honestly, it all blurs together, but I'm pretty sure I was like a freshman or sophomore in college when I did that one summer. So yeah.
It's interesting you say that because I mentioned before another podcast that, or another episode, that I took a group of kids down to Mexico
Yes.
with were you there with Pat with
Yeah.
Lois when Lois was with us? And
Mhm.
like I was not any older than that, like a freshman, sophomore in college. And like I don't know if that's unique to Five Oaks in particular, or if churches tend to do this, because my son isn't of the age yet to kind of maybe watch it happen. But like they're putting kids and young adults into leadership positions.
Yeah.
And I think those intentions were good. They're like, we see a leadership quality in this person for this role, and we're going to help them develop it. That was,
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good intuition on their part to try and find help that way. They, of
Yeah.
course,
No,
didn't have to pay us, but
yeah.
we
Cause
did
no,
good.
when I was a junior, that's when I went to Mexico. So you would have been a freshman in college. And I remember you
Mhm.
being on that Mexico trip. And then I just remember you were one of our youth group leaders when I was like a senior in high
Yeah.
school. So yeah, so you had come back like at least your freshman, sophomore year. But yeah, I went to Mexico the year with you and then Ryan when he had broken his foot. Wasn't that it was that year?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but that was the year I wasn't a leader that year, but we did definitely go on one of those trips together. But
Okay.
it was a couple
Okay.
years later. I took a myself a set of kit of boys, and then
Okay. No, yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Lois was with me too,
I wasn't
with
in
a
that
set of
group.
girls. And it's like
Okay.
I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm in the middle of Mexico. So, but you know
Yeah.
what? We figured it out. So,
Hmm.
all that being said, with your family and with your experience at youth group, just what did faith look like for you in the 90s?
Again, I think I had a very small, limited kind of a viewpoint of what Christianity should look like or be. I very much was a people pleaser. I was very much a rule follower, and so I tried really hard to kind of fit in this perfect little like I thought what this perfect little like kind of Christian, like what a Christian should look like. So I
Hmm.
feel like when I think it was one of your first podcasts when you were talking about how I think you were saying something how like we kind of remember how we kind of were like we were the only church, or this was the only belief, or this
Mm.
was the, like kind of the one and only, or you talked about like being kind of judgmental. I feel like
Hmm.
that's who I was as a teenager. I think I was very judgmental. I remember like it's horrible, but I remember like thinking about it, like when you guys were talking like, oh, those kids that go to the Lutheran church, they're not
Right.
really Christians. They're not real, like I was just so judgmental and just thought like unless you were doing these things or going to this church or doing, like then you were a Christian. So
Mm.
I would say, yeah, I had a very limited view of what it meant to be a Christian back when I was a teenager.
Mm.
So, and that has definitely evolved as I've become an adult. And I look back and I'm like, I would not like myself very much in high school for those, for some of those reasons. So,
Hmm.
or I want to be like, I would like to apologize to anyone, in youth group, outside of youth group at school, and be like, I'm sorry if you felt judged by me because I
Hmm.
probably was judging you and I probably shouldn't have been doing that. So, yeah, that's what I kind of think about when I think about myself as a teenager.
Apology accepted.
Except
Finally, see,
not
Caleb, I
you,
told you she'd
not
apologize if
you,
she
not
Oh,
to
not
you.
me.
No,
brought it up.
That
it
makes
didn't affect
sense.
you. You
I
weren't
don't
my
deserve it.
you weren't
Yes.
my friend. I'm just kidding. I'm talking about friends.
I will say
Tell you what.
Bethany judgments of Caleb were probably accurate.
Yeah, no.
So
Yeah, that's a completely different kind of judgment. You always judge your siblings, of
right.
course, and yeah.
We'll
So
get to that episode. Let's get a few more things out and then we'll just bring Bethany back just to go. Now, here's the list of things Caleb did wrong.
Just
to
we keep saying this is free therapy. So if this turns into free family therapy, fine. Fine.
go.
Someone will listen. It'll be fun. I'll come back to that word limited in a little bit because I think that's interesting. But as a little dovetail of that, we did get a response from somebody who was listening to that episode where I think we were talking about, hey, we have to go convert the Lutherans because we got it right. And they messaged like, hey, we even were, some of us were like convinced we needed to go convert the Baptists. I'm like, come on now. Like this we're basically the same thing. And I don't what was it about that group where we were just so convicted and firm in that idea that we have this right and nobody else does.
I don't know. I mean, we kind of talked that about like as a religion, like Christianity was the only religion and the only way. So I don't know if it came from that or I don't know what it was, but yeah, I just remember being like, oh, those Lutheran kids or those Young Life kids, they're not
Hmm.
Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like there were people I knew that probably act a certain way in high school or at school and then acted a different way in church. So
Hmm.
some of my judgment might have come from that, like, oh yeah, you'll act like this kind of a person when you're at church with us, but then when you go to school, you act a different way or you participate in different things where I, again, was judging you like you're not a Christian if you participate in these
Yeah.
things. So,
Yeah.
there might have been a little bit of that, but yeah, that's
I don't think it's something that's unique to Five Oaks. I mean, I think you
no,
have so many
probably not.
denominations because people think they have it right. And so
Hmm.
you can see how that can easily escalate to
Hmm.
thinking, well, not only do we have it right, but everybody else has it wrong. And,
Hmm.
my favorite cartoon ever is this little comic strip, and it's like a reverse tournament bracket. And it's got this, like, it ends up with like 100 different options. And there's one circled, and it's this group of people sitting there going, God's so lucky we finally figured it out. And I love that idea that, like, our denomination finally figured it out and all the rest of them got it wrong. Isn't God lucky we did that?
We've blessed him that way.
Yeah.
No, I think that there was a certain like boldness to that part of it where, for better or worse, the leaders were like, hey, yeah, go tell everybody
Hmm.
Hmm.
that maybe just to make sure, but at least go tell everybody and they saw that in us. Like we boldly wanted to go out there and share it, which
Hmm.
is not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe
No.
sometimes it might have been like, hey, pump the brakes a bit.
Yeah.
You don't
I
need to
mean,
steal kids from the other youth group. They're fine.
yeah, or just like my, friends at school that I invited every time we had an event, or I always
Hmm.
invited to youth group or always invited to barf night, and they never came. And I remember having a conversation with one of them in college because we kept and she actually did start going to a Bible study in college. And I don't know, we must have gotten into a conversation about something and about me like not being perfect or sinning, or I don't know what it was. And she like literally looked at me like, what? You're not perfect. You're not. I'm like, oh, no, of course not. And I'm like, oh crap. I clearly like portrayed myself as this perfect little Christian. And I think those friends that I was inviting, they might have felt intimidated because they're like, well, we're not up to Bethany's level, so we can't go to youth. And I feel horrible about that. Like, that's not what I was trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, because of my limited understanding of things or the way I thought you had to be your act or do or say, that's what came across with some of those people. So,
Right. Yeah.
that's just what happens. But it was good for me to have someone say something like that to me, for me to be like, oh, whoa, you need to, yeah,
Yeah.
step back and really look at how you're treating people or talking to people or portraying yourself. Like, of course, I'm not perfect. Of course, I sin. Like, of course, I do all sorts of things that are wrong. But I guess people didn't think, I was trying to portray myself as someone that didn't do that.
Sure.
Hmm.
Well, that's a very honest answer. I really appreciate you
Mhm.
sharing that because, that's not a fun memory to relive. Like I was a judgy kid. I was I mean, I
Yeah.
was too. I went into college being like super like
Uh-huh.
confident and then
And then you experience life and you experience other people and all different things, and it really opens your eyes to be like, oh, okay,
hmm
there are other ways to go around this, or ways you can be, or all of that.
yeah.
So yeah, exactly.
What are some memories that you either share with your daughter about youth group, or maybe you said you have your friends from Five Oaks now attends church with you. Like, what are some of the things where you kind of maybe look at each other and kind of give a side eye about, this memory or this event, or maybe even a teaching that has stuck with you guys that, is still very vivid.
I mean, my daughter's only 6, so I don't really like talk much about youth group quite yet. But as Caleb knows, I like to tell his children all sorts of
There
stories
you go.
at
As
family
an aunt, what do you
gatherings
tell them?
that he
Yeah,
does not appreciate. And then
excellent.
obviously my stepkids are older, so I would tell them, I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna lay down the drama of this of this youth group. Like, this happened, this happened, this happened. They're like, whoa. So yeah, so I don't know. So I haven't really gotten into that yet with my daughter, but I can't wait to tell her all the fun, crazy like games that we played. Or, I just hope she has a lot of some of those I hope, because I know like things are changing in the way they have to do things, just because of, what life looks like now. But I hope she has, she gets to go to like stay away camp or something, like a Christian camp, or she gets to go on retreats, or she gets to have some of those experiences, because I don't think a lot of necessarily kids do get
Hmm.
those experiences, even if they're a part of a youth group. Like, it looks like Caleb was, I think, was saying, it just looks really different sometimes nowadays. So I really
Hmm.
hope she gets to have some of those experiences. I think they were really important experiences.
Hmm.
So as scary as that is, to think of your teenage child going to another country without you, or going away for a week without you, I also think it really helped me, in my college life, and, living, out, away, or like living overseas then after college. I think it really helped me with that independence, to be
Hmm.
able to do things like that. So I think those are important experiences.
And if the church can be a vehicle for that, especially if it's a place that you trust people, then why
Yeah,
not?
exactly. And it's a group of friends that she feels comfortable and safe with. What a great experience. So, because yeah, those were memories that I mean, I forget some things apparently, but those are memories we don't forget. So, and
Hmm.
I do think were a huge part of, my childhood and my, as a teenager. So,
So you had mentioned the word limited before. You said you had a, limited understanding of what Christianity was, or could be.
mhm.
What are some things that kind of was there a certain event or, something that happened, some teaching that you had where you kind of started to like see like maybe it didn't need to be so specific what we were taught in the 90s, or maybe we didn't need to be pigeonholed into this specific theology. Like when did things start becoming more unlimited for you?
I wish I could say it was in college, but I don't think it was. I really think it was when I lived overseas, when I lived in Thailand, and I just met So many different people, like Christians from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, growing up in different households, churches, and just meeting those people and seeing them and thinking, well, of course, like that's a person that like a Christian or that someone that has a strong faith, but they are doing these things that I used to, deem as like that's not okay or that's not Christian. And I would never question their faith. So I really think
Mm.
just experiencing people from all over the world and all different walks of life and different upbringings, that's really what they really just opened my mind to, okay, there are different ways we can look at this and there are different understandings of, what it means to be a Christian.
Mhm.
So, and I think that really helped. Yeah, I really think that shaped a lot of my beliefs and where I am today. And yeah, just having a much more
Broader
empathetic
view.
or yeah, broader view of like just having being the opposite of like we just want to love people and have empathy and accept them and welcome them and all of those things that I feel like my church that I currently go to really strives to do. And
Mhm.
that's really, showing people God's love. So
I had forgotten about your Thailand experience. Didn't you guys have a aunt and uncle who were missionaries over there or something like that?
yep. So when I graduated from college with a teaching license, the year before, I think it was like a Bethel student had been over there helping them with like homeschooling two of my cousins. And basically my aunt just said, "Hey, do you want to come over here and homeschool two of your cousins?" And I was like, hold on, there's a position in the school I was student teaching in. If I don't get that job, sure, I'll come to Thailand because we had visited as a family. I really liked it. And I
Mhm.
really thought I was being called to live overseas at some point in my adulthood. So I didn't even get an interview. So I was like, well, I guess I'm moving to Thailand.
God
So
has a plan for you. That's where he's sending you.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. And so I went for a year and they wanted someone for another year and I loved it. So I was like, yes, I'll do it again. And then they were coming home on sabbatical. And I was like, I would still really like to stay here. I love Thailand. And so then I had a connection with some friends through church that worked at an international Christian school. And I got a job there. And I taught second grade there for 2 years at an international school. So
Dang.
yeah, so I was there for 4 years, 4 amazing years. I don't ever regret making that decision, and it really shaped who I am today. And I still have lifelong friends even though they live all over the United States and all over the world, we still talk on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So, like, me and my daughter are going to go visit one of those friends in July. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Hmm.
That's a really cool avenue to talk about. I know Caleb, you had mentioned earlier you did some time overseas as well. A few of our friends that we've mentioned on this podcast, Ryan was over there for a bit, that sort of thing. And man, you know, I had that experience not as a teacher or whatever, but of course, I've talked about living over in Europe until I came back before when I was 14 for high school. And like just that little experience of it's not in a mission, it's not like a church missions to the orphanage. Like, it's you're in the real world and and you realize the world is a super big place. And if we hold to the belief that God created everybody and everything, we have to accept that these things are, happening elsewhere. And maybe that we don't need to pigeonhole people into just kind of this one system
Hmm.
all the time. So that I think I've said it for my kid too. Like I want him to get out there and do things on his own to realize how big the world is because it's a huge place.
Hmm. And it's a wonderful, amazing place.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
So that you kind of had that Thailand experience that started to open up your eyes, give you a broader view of the world, God's creation. So with that transition, how does your faith now compared to what you had in the 90s? What not only what's changed, but like do you still hold on to some of those things that we learned about in youth group and those beliefs we had or, and what's different?
I mean, the foundation I think is somewhat the same. I think it's just that my beliefs about certain topics that maybe we were raised to believe have definitely changed and shifted from what I believed back there. But I mean, obviously, like the foundation of our faith is still the same. So Yeah, I definitely there's different things, beliefs that I wouldn't agree with now that like how we were what we were taught growing up.
What if you don't mind sharing, what would be like one or two of those things?
So again, my ideas or theology on things like abortion, being gay, like the whole idea of like it's a choice, and it's a sin. Those things have definitely changed and evolved as I've gotten older. One of my good friends from Thailand that I taught with is gay, and it was the same thing. It was just like meeting her, it was like how could I look at her and say like, no, you're not a Christian, like your faith isn't real. Like I could never say that to her, and I would never question that her faith and her relationship with God is not legit because of who she loves. So it was kind
Mhm.
of the same thing where it was like when you have a close friend like that in a Christian community, I would never, yeah, be like, oh, well, you're not a Christian or you're going, like I could never say that to her. And so I think that really did kind of open my eyes of,
It sounds like the relationships that you've had, the way that your faith kind of has changed, become less limited over time, it's been a big influence from relationships with people coming from different backgrounds and having a different faith from you.
hmm
Would your younger self have been intimidated by that? Would you have stood your ground, or would you think you would have been kind of like, well, okay, I think I could think about this differently?
Yeah, I think my younger self, especially on like being gay, I think I always struggled with that. Like I really struggled with the idea of like this is a sin and this is something that someone chose because I just always thought, why would someone choose to be, back when we were in high school, like it was not accepted to be gay. And so I remember like people that I knew that came out as being gay, and I thought that person is probably getting ridiculed or made fun of. Why would they choose to do that? And just
Hmm.
thinking, and again, just thinking, who am I to tell this person, no, that's not how you feel. No, that's not how you were born. I never felt, yeah, I guess I never felt right about telling someone like that's a choice you're making and it's a wrong choice and it's a sin. Like I just never felt okay about that because I thought I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what they're thinking. So who am I to say, yeah, no, that's not right. Yeah, so even though we believed that and that I was taught that, I always struggled with that. So with that belief. And now definitely knowing people that are gay that are Christians or have a strong faith, that's definitely changed how I feel about that or how I've looked at that. So
Yeah, that relational aspect, you
hmm
can stand on a moral teaching until you have to interact with somebody who
yeah.
might have those desires and leanings. And similar to you, when I started thinking about the concept of whether you choose that or not, and I'm like, I never chose, like, there was no part of me that I was ever looking at two options, like you're in a grocery store and like, I have to choose which one do I want more. It's just always that's a very complicated, difficult concept, right? And so the
hmm
more that these understanding of those things has grown, particularly over a lifetime, you're like, there is a lot of people have
hmm
understood that there's a case to be made that is not the interpretations we understood about those verses in the Bible are not always as maybe they're not what they fully meant back in the day.
Yeah. And I think again, my idea of like if you want to get into abortion is the same thing where obvious and I think my biggest thing is always like just because you're pro-choice doesn't mean you're pro-abortion. Like no one is
Hmm.
pro-abortion, like, yeah, let's do that. Like people that get an abortion, for me, it's why are they in this situation? What happened? Why do they feel like their only option is this option? And I think, again, having friends that have gone through that at a young age and watching them and how hard that was, or hearing people's stories about that, thinking, yeah, like no one chose that. No one's like, I mean, they chose it, but they're not like, yeah, this is a great idea and I really want to do this and this feels wonderful. And so for me, it's more about what can we do so that women are not put in this position where they feel like this is the only choice that they have. And just again, coming at it as like, again, who am I to say like this is what you need to do or this is what you need to choose when I'm not in that situation? I don't know how that feels. I don't know what that would be like. So it's again a very much for me, who am I to say, nope, you can't do this, or if you do this, like this is wrong. So just hearing stories of women that have gone through that and maybe it was not easy or they wish they hadn't done that. But again, at that time in their life, that they felt like that was their only choice.
Hmm.
But I'm again a big advocate of what can we do to prevent women to be getting into that position? Like,
Hmm.
what are the resources? What are the things that these women need in order to not get into this? Like that's what I'm all about. So yeah, my biggest struggle now is like just if you are pro-choice, you're not like, yeah, I don't feel like you're like, yeah, get an
Do what you
abortion,
want.
like we're pro-abortion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
So, but again, just I get think coming back to that, like, but who am I to judge that person? Like, I don't know what that feels like. And I've never been put in that situation where I feel like that's my only choice. So but recently, with my diagnosis of breast cancer in May of 2022, I had a very different perspective about abortion because as a cancer patient, people don't think about the fact that if when I was diagnosed, if I had been pregnant, I would have had to make a choice between having an abortion and then being able to go along with my cancer treatment and hopefully saving my life. Or if I had decided to keep the child, then I would have risked not doing my own cancer treatment and then possibly risked my own life. So thankfully, I wasn't put in that position, but people don't think about the fact that as a cancer patient, that is something that they might have to deal with if that is the case. Thankfully that wasn't the case for me, but that really opened my eyes to think about, first of all, cancer sucks alone as it is. And then to have to make a terrible decision between your life and your child's life is even a worse decision. And then thinking about what if I don't even have that choice and the government makes that choice for me and I don't even get to make the choice for myself and what's best for me or what's best for my family. So I think even though I haven't been in that situation, I now have another understanding of what some people might have to go through, and just the fact that again, like it's not black and white, it can be situational. Every different situations can be different, and thinking about that as a cancer patient and how horrible and awful that would be, and knowing very well that I would absolutely would have had an abortion, which would be a horrible thing to do, but I would have done that so that I could have fought and survived and lived for the child that I already have, that I already know, that I already have a relationship with. So just again, I think sometimes it's not so black and white, and having been faced with something like that really just gives me a whole different perspective on that, and learning more and talking to people and understanding their experiences and where they're coming from and having kind of some empathy and trying to understand and help and love and care for those people instead of judging them or
Hmm.
saying like, well, you're a sinner or you're not a Christian or you're whatever. So
Hmm.
I think, yeah, that is definitely why some of my opinions on certain topics have changed over the years. So,
It's cool that you can identify that you've moved from like judgmental Bethany to non-judgmental Bethany. Like that's a
yeah.
really, that's a really
Yeah. I
good
mean,
thing to
yeah.
realize, and
Uh-huh.
sometimes a lot of people like you mature out of that and they figure out. Other times they don't because they don't have the circle stays small,
Hmm.
right? They don't have that Thailand experience. They don't end up getting close to somebody who is gay. They don't know a woman who's had an abortion. And so I think that I find it there's a lot of beauty in that circle in the bubble being burst and expanding and then figuring out from there, because I think what that says about, someone like you who's done that is, you know what, I'm going to go into this saying God's bigger than me. I don't know everything. I don't have it all down.
Yeah.
And it's going to work out in the end. I'm still going to believe in who he is and what he did for me through Christ, but maybe some of the things aren't entirely the same.
Hmm.
And that's a cool journey to be on.
Yeah, I just think we learn so much by sharing experiences with other people that are not necessarily like us, didn't grow up the same way as us, didn't come from the same background as us. And there's so much beauty in that. And I've learned so much. And yes, I hope I've changed and matured and developed because of those relationships. So yeah, I hope someone says, no, you're a caring, loving, giving, supportive person now. Like that is who I want to be, and that's who I want my daughter to see me as, and who I want my daughter to grow up being. So, yeah.
Caleb, you're the judge on that. Is she that type of person now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's no, yeah, I'm glad we're interviewing non-judgy Bethany. I think that's good. That's, we hit the right Tuesday afternoon, or is it Tuesday or Monday? I don't even know what day of the week it is.
It's only Monday.
It's only Monday.
We're just happy we didn't start this podcast back in the 90s, because that would be really bad.
Yeah.
Although if we would have started it back in the 90s, we'd be billionaires because podcasts weren't a thing. Missed opportunity.
All right. I do wish we did. Well, looking back, through those changes, looking back on that youth group experience, like, was there any particular like event, experience, teaching that you kind of struggle with or cringe at, or you're just like, man, that was really off?
I mean, we've already touched on a couple of the topics, but I don't know if I remember how he always said, like, either God is he's a lunatic, a liar.
The C.S. Lewis quote.
Yes, I don't know why. I'm not saying that's wrong or right, but I just don't know why. Like when I think about that quote, I was like, maybe it's just because it was said so many times.
That's true.
I'm just like, can we come up with a different way to say that? But
sure.
I don't know why that was like one of the biggest teachings that I just remember so much. And I'm like, again, is it just because like we were told that so many times? I don't know.
Yes.
Yes. So I do always think of that when I think of certain teachings that we talked about in youth group. But
yeah, it was a liar, lunatic, or who he said
he was. Yeah, exactly. One of the three.
Well, that's like most people, I guess.
That was like pretty much for all those things. Yeah, one of those things.
So yeah, we did rely on some of those sayings pretty easily. We won't put the ages in here, but what would Judgy Bethany say to current Bethany, and then vice versa? Like, what are some things that you would want to tell former self, and likewise?
What I want to tell, I don't know. I would hope that Judgy Bethany could maybe have her eyes opened a little bit by adult Bethany. But yeah, and obviously I would tell myself back then, like just, get to know people and listen to where they're coming from and step back and look at it from their perspective, from their shoes. So
I would, oh man, I'm not going to cry. I would think your 18-year-old self, especially after the last couple of years, would look at your current age self and probably I hope they'd be pretty blown away, I think, because I think just, you mentioned your cancer journey and just your stuff going on in your life, and like I would think your 18-year-old self would be I think they'd kind of sit there in awe, because I know mom and dad and I have talked about it, and just kind of how strong you've shown yourself to be, and you were raised by a very strong, independent woman, and it's really that has really come out in the last couple of years. So I thought about that question leading up to this time, and I thought, whatever that 18-year-old self would probably just sit there with her jaw open, because I don't think she would have realized how strong she would grow to be. Not that you weren't strong back then, but I think she'd be in for a shock, and really for a, oh my gosh, look at what I can prove I can do, and what I can get through. So
yeah, and I think if you would have told me back then that this is where I would be in my life in my 40s, I would have been like, yeah, no, there's no way that would have ever happened. So I honestly just think, yeah, my 18-year-old self would be like, yeah, you're lying. Like, that's not where my life is going to go. That is not where I'm going to be in my 40s. Like, I just never, ever thought I would be in this place. But like you said, my faith and our family and my community, including my church community, is the reason I've gotten through these last 2 years and the reason I am as strong as I am. And yeah, our mom is a strong, independent woman, and she has taught me a lot. And I know I am the person I am today because of her.
Yeah.
And you, Dad, too, but
Let's give mom. We'll give
definitely
mom the credit.
give mom the credit. But
Your
you
dad would
know,
give your mom the credit.
Yeah,
he would
probably
too.
would.
He would. So yeah, I mean, again, I just think I'm so incredibly blessed with the parents that we have, and I can't imagine having any other parents, and I just don't know what I would do without them, especially in these last 2 years of my life. Whoever thought you would need your parents? I feel like sometimes I need them more now in my 40s than I did as a teenager. So yeah,
Mhm.
it is kind of an interesting how that has come around where you always need your parents even when you're an adult. So
Yeah.
yeah, but thanks, bro.
I'm gonna ask a question that's not intended to be like crazy or anything. I just kind of want to get to just another layer which you mentioned earlier. But the question that I was thinking of is, with all the things that have gone on with in your life, you know, was there ever a time when, your faith was like, I'm just done with this? Like I want to go. Like I just don't need this anymore. Or was it always something that you were like, I got to hold on to this because sometimes it's all I got?
hmm that's a good question. I always felt like anytime something was hard or we were going through something, I always turned to my faith and I just knew like this is how I'm going to get through this. And it always, I was able to just be like, look at how much stronger I am and how much stronger my faith is until I was diagnosed with cancer. And
Mm,
I have never been so angry at God. I have never been so, yeah, ready to give up the towel and just say, like, what the heck? Like, why me? Like, why is this happening to me? Like, this is not okay. And yeah, what was all this for if this is how it's gonna end?
mm,
So I think that was the one time where it really really, really was hard for me to not be angry and not want to just turn from God and be like, screw you.
mhm,
Look at what you've done to me. Like, why me? Why is this happening to me right now in my life? And I really struggled with my faith. I really struggled that year. But I think there was just a small piece that I still hung on to, and I knew I needed him and I needed my faith to get through it. But I definitely wanted to be like, nope, we're done. Like
mhm,
I can't believe you've done this to me. I can't believe this is happening to me. How could you do this to me?
Mm.
And never until then really felt like maybe God doesn't love me. Maybe God is not here with me, helping me getting me through this. But I think when it's so hard like that and when you get to the other side, like that's when you can see like, nope, he was there and he helped me get through that. And he really did. I really am the strong person that I am today because of that and because of what
mhm.
I had to go through. So yeah, I think that was the one time where I was like, nope, we're good. We're done. But I'm so glad that, I got through it and he was, that was part of it. So
Mm.
yeah.
Well, of course, we're glad he brought you through it and everything, and
Yes.
it's such an amazing testimony, and it's I'm in awe, if people do that, right? Like I haven't had to go through any of that, and I don't know how I'd react. There are probably a lot of people out there who have those experiences, whether themselves or people close to them. They're just like, I'm done, and there's nothing. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. Like life's tough. Like life can be tough.
hmm
So, good on you for having, getting to this spot, and also just, sounds like being part of that community and kind of letting them help you out,
Yeah.
letting them help bring you through.
hmm Yeah. If you ever have to ask for help, that's when you got to start really. It's hard to ask for help, but you have to. Like, there's just no way you can get through something
Hmm.
like that without people to support you, for sure.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you also in the last couple of years really saw how much, like, I think you knew people loved you. We all kind of have that. Oh, I know people love me. And then like
hmm
I know mom and dad, and I'll speak for them and myself. Like that church community that you have, like it's kind of been a little mind blowing. Like how that your circle of friends has really been this like bedrock, and it's kind of like they've shown up in such massive ways that it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, it's not it really you really have gotten to see it play out in
Mhm.
like how much these people love you and care for you, and we've really gotten to see it just displayed all over the place, and it's been kind of amazing to see that.
Yep, exactly. You
That's
do
awesome.
really, yeah. That is when your people and your community just really show up, and it is, you're right, it's mind blowing. So, and that's been such a huge blessing for us. And again, that's just, it comes back to, I feel like we had that growing up. I think
Mm.
we had this really amazing community that supported us and loved us and our parents. And I'm so grateful that I feel like I have that now as an adult, and that now my daughter will grow up with that as well. So it's amazing and it's so important. So
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
this is kind of amazing to get you to this point, through all
Hmm.
that, but to have that reflection back, like you knew maybe what you had back then, you knew you needed it, you went and sought it out in a different format, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And and it's functioning, the same way that as it should, when people are in a community together and they see suffering,
Yeah.
that's a biblical action.
Yeah. And I mean, again, just to be clear, like I loved the community like that we had in youth group. I loved our friend group. I looked forward to every Sunday going to getting up at the butt crack of dawn to go to leadership, at Perkins. And then we would go to
Jeez.
Sunday school, and then we would go to church, and we'd all sit together. And then we would go out to lunch, and then we
Lunch.
would hang out at someone's house, probably Scott's. Like we spent the entire day together. I love that. I
Yeah.
mean, my life was our church community, and it was a huge part of my growing up. And I loved every minute of it. It was such a blessing to have those relationships and to have that community. And again, I think part of me is it's because I am a very extroverted social person. So I loved that aspect of it. And I was fine that we were at church, what, 2, 3 days a week.
Mhm.
I was okay with that. So I loved all the time that we did get to spend together, just as a community and as a group of friends. So that was a main that was a main part of my, growing up in my group of friends, was that
Yeah.
those people from church.
Yeah, they did a great job of that.
Hmm.
Well, you spent a lot of time with us tonight. Thank you for sharing so much about your journey. And it's past all of our bedtimes. So I'm
Hmm.
going to ask the one question that I always have. And you know what it is because you've been listening. But what's the one like event or thing that we did where that was the grossest, most audacious thing that we did as a group that you can identify?
I mean, I'm sorry. I think someone already said this, but like the Carmen skits, like it just can't.
What are you
Like,
talking about? Speaking of things not
I
that
just,
shouldn't have been available back then. Good thing
I
YouTube wasn't
just,
available.
and I know now, like through TikTok, like there were other youth groups doing the same thing that we were doing, but I just think like there is no way my stepdaughter and stepson would ever have done anything even remotely close to that in front of other people, like where we were being
Hmm.
watched and like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. That was just the one where I'm like, sometimes I'm like, was it a dream? Did we really do that? Like, did we really perform that in
Oh
front
yeah.
of all those people or our church? Or I don't remember doing, you guys were talking about in Mexico. I don't remember doing it in Mexico, but we did it. I don't remember. We did it
Think
other
about
places.
we did in Mexico. Think about it. Like we played Carmen in English, and
They can't
we're trying to figure out what. And they're watching the sketch. Now look,
understand.
there's room, of course, to be said for like drama and that being an art form, everything that can communicate a lot. You don't need to know,
Yeah.
but like we just like this will portray the message. And so, like, did you play Jesus? Did you play?
Well, I was a
They probably
demon.
would have let a woman
Hello.
play Jesus,
I was a
frankly.
demon.
Yeah.
All I remember is me, Bonnie, Bill, maybe Jackie. We were all the demons. I remember Aaron was the devil. You were
Hmm.
Jesus. You were
Hmm.
God, weren't you, Caleb? You had to have been God.
I think I was the
And then John was
narrator.
the
Oh,
narrator.
maybe
I think
John was the
John was the
narrator.
narrator and you were God, and Scott was Jesus, and Bill was an angel, and Elaine was an angel, and Leah was an angel. And all I remember is me, Bonnie, Bill, and I think Jackie were demons. And we had so much fun. Like
Yeah.
we loved being demons.
Yeah, of course. So
Yeah.
wouldn't
So
you?
That's what all I remember. I think that was like the first time we did it. That was the group. And then I think we did it again with a different group. And I don't remember. I just remember that group. And that was the angels and the demons. And
Hmm.
yeah, it was pretty funny. I think you were God because I feel like I was like, haha, he's playing your son.
Nice. Yeah.
I thought that was funny that he got to play your son.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah. So
I literally this week heard somebody talking about this on another podcast, and they called them human videos. That's what they called them. So
yes,
like this, it was a thing, and
it was a thing.
it was not just our church. It was a
No.
whole bunch of youth groups, and human videos is the term he used. And I was like,
Yes.
oh
I
man,
think
there it is.
yep, I think I do remember people saying that or
Yeah.
using that phrase.
You know what? Frankly, that stuff hasn't changed. It's just the format is different now. You just make a short for your phone. You're just trying to describe the same.
Exactly.
But
It is true. True.
we could have gone a little bit outside the, norm and not done Carmen 100 different times. I
Yeah.
get that.
But
Yeah.
again, like we've established, that's the best way to communicate the things of God
That is
via
true.
Carmen human video.
That's true. We should get the band back together and do that, and then throw it
Oh
up
my
on
gosh.
YouTube, have it immortalized.
I
No?
think we can do a Kickstarter for that. Let's see if we can do a Kickstarter to do Five Oaks Community Church human video 30 years later.
Worst Kickstarter ever. $0.
Potato salad.
And then I really appreciate whoever brought up the peanut butter jelly game. I was like, I clearly
Oh, yeah.
blocked that,
That was-
from my memory
That was
because I
Jackie.
yep, I did not remember that until she brought that up. I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, that's
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
No one
So,
died
yeah.
that we know of.
No,
Or not right
no.
there, at least.
because
Well,
I was just like, oh, Pudgy Bunny or the cracker game where you put a bunch of crackers in your mouth and you try to whistle, even though we probably could have choked. And then she brought those up, and I was like, oh, yep, I blocked those out
that
of my
was worse.
memory
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah.
Because no, not okay.
We'll say we really appreciate you sharing your time with us and your story. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah.
And thank you for being our only fan. That's perfectly fine. But we thank you for listening to your brother's podcast. But yeah, we really appreciate talking to you. And thanks for spending time with us tonight.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of I Survived Youth Group in the 90s. We hope you enjoyed it. Once again, we just want to say thanks to Bethany for taking time out of her day to join us. It was really great to be able to have my sister on the show. And yeah, so it was really great to have her. So thanks again, Bethany, for joining the show and just sharing your experiences and kind of the journey you've been on since the Youth Group in the 90s experience. Let us know what you thought about this show or any of our other shows. You can find us on Twitter at the handle @SurvivedYG. You can also email us at ISurvivedYouthGroup@gmail.com. If you're interested in being on the show, let us know. You didn't have to necessarily attend our youth group, but if you have your own youth group experience from the 90s or even the 2000s, we'd love to connect and, try and find an opportunity to have you on the show. Please subscribe and share the podcast. If you're so inclined, leave a rating or review. If you enjoy this show, you might also enjoy the other podcast I do. It's a music podcast called the Album Anniversary Podcast. Over the last couple of years, I've researched and documented the release date of thousands of albums. Throughout the week, I post about them on social media. I've had a couple different formats on the show, but again, it's a chance to sit down and talk about some of the music that I've documented and I share from my calendar. Once again, it's called the Album Anniversary Podcast. The music at the beginning and the end of this show is the instrumental version of the song Positive Charge by the artist Dread Pirate Roberts. Thanks again, and we will talk to you soon.
Work your magic, Caleb. Work your magic.